Hey guys, what's going on? It's Filmington, and in today's episode, we're going to be doing a market update. And we're going to follow that with a few other topics I wanted to discuss. So first of all, the stock market, it's in the middle of a bull run over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Still a far way away from February's highs, but we are in a minor bull run. And I think this is where we all have to be careful in that in many instances like this, the stock market is not an accurate representation of the overall health of the broader economy. And what do I mean by that? Well, the stock market is going to be biased towards large cap stocks, companies that have the largest market capitalizations that in many cases will have the strongest balance sheets, the greatest ability to scale through an economic softening like this one. Now, the overall economy, the coronavirus, the current number and acceleration of deaths and of cases has been probably on the lower end of estimates when we first built out the models a few months ago, which is great. And in many cases in counties, cities, and states throughout the United States, we have already seen a peak, which is great. So social distancing is something that's definitely had a positive effect on the ability to combat the spread of the coronavirus. The greater issue is that we don't yet have a vaccine for the coronavirus. It's still not expected to have one till at least 12 months from now. And over 15 million individuals in the United States are jobless right now. And banks are stressed right now, and they've required capital injections because of the rising increase of loan defaults and expected loan defaults. And GDP growth estimates for the second through fourth quarters, as predicted by many of the analysts, are going to be negative and quite bad. We are in a broad-based economic freeze. Consumption is frozen. That's the biggest issue right now. Now, the government has been trying to fight this consumption issue by injecting large sums of money into the economy. And time will tell if the cash-strapped small businesses that are the lifeblood and drive of this economy can survive. Can they get the money quick enough? Can they continue operations? And can individuals recover and survive throughout this nightmare situation that we have going on now? All right, now let's talk about the sports card market. Probably beginning the last week of March, we saw that the price declines across a vast majority of cards on eBay stopped, and those started to come back up a little bit. We saw it more and more as we got deeper in April, just a very slow, steady increase across most prices of most cards, I would say. And something else I've noticed is that the price of sealed wax, again, maybe that slowed down a little bit for some of the new products only. The 2020 products like Top Series 1 Heritage I saw it for. Mid-March, those prices maybe came down a bit, but they've been strong. And a lot of the other products this stands for as well, even more so. 2017, 2018, 2019, even stuff before that. If it was a good product that was sought out by the mass public prior to all this happening, it's retained demand. And I think that because a lot of the 2020 Topps products that were originally expected to be released in April were pushed out, I think that's created more demand for all of the other products. For the most part, I believe all the breakers are still in operation. Most of the hobby shops and online retailers are still in business, so they're wanting to get their hands on other product. Topps, just like any good company, loves to innovate, and this year they brought forward the Topps 2020 project. Now these cards are based on modern, mostly vintage players, and they are designed by Topps' array of artists, and they all have different designs, and they're very interesting. It's a similar concept to the Topps Living set, which gave consumers the ability to buy directly from Topps for a certain number of hours or days until they stopped and they moved on to different players. So the print runs are unlimited, but they're limited to the amount of transactions that happen during that window where you can actually buy the copies of that. So that's something that I'll keep my eye on. I haven't purchased any of those yet. I wonder if it'll be a case like Topps Living Set where some of the earlier produced designs end up carrying the most value because they end up being more rare. So keep an eye on Ichiro, and I think Sandy Koufax is selling for quite a bit right now. In other news, government stimulus checks have started to surface in people's bank accounts this week. More and more people are probably getting their tax refunds back. And as I mentioned earlier, the stock market's in the midst of a mini bull market, it seems. If you were to look back at when modern baseball card prices started to trend back up in late March, I'm not sure if that 100% correlates, but I think it's probably at least partially connected to the rebound of the stock market. I would suggest being very cautious with auctions. I think they'll be very competitive. I'd be more of a seller than buyer this week for all those reasons. I think modern sports cards have prospered a bit in the midst of this economic circumstance because the consumption issues that face many other industries and types of goods doesn't hurt sports cards to the same magnitude. The greatest volume of sports cards transactions were always done online, eBay, Facebook, Instagram, etc., and that hasn't changed. Another aspect could have to do with people being bored at home. Maybe they can't spend money on other things, so they go to baseball cards. Next, let's talk about baseball games. Are there going to be any baseball games this year? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but last week, ESPN reported that health officials had met with the MLB to try to come forward with a proposal to put in front of the Players Union. And this proposal was quite a wacky one. It had to do with a bio bubble concept that would take place in Arizona's spring training facilities, basically where you'd have all the players in one place. They wouldn't interact with anyone else in civilization, so they couldn't get the coronavirus as long as they didn't come with it because they're not interfacing with anybody else from society. The players would be away from their families for 4.5 weeks. There would be no fans. There would be fewer umpires and a greater use of robotic umpiring. The players would have to sit in the stands a certain amount of feet apart. The ESPN reporter that was relaying this story actually compared this to the logistics that would be needed for a bank heist in a movie. Now, this is my opinion here, and it might be an extreme opinion, but I think that this was all part of a ploy by the MLB to say that, well, we did all we could. We met with public health officials and we came forward with a solution. And we brought it in front of players. And, if the players say no, then it's on them because they're the ones that said no. We were willing to cooperate. I just think that, and I'm not fully in touch with the media deal, the media side of this, and if there's a clawback or how much money is guaranteed to MLB from that and how much of that trickles down to players' paychecks. But I think that MLB owners are going to lose so much money from the gate receipts because they're not going to have fans, where the incentive to have a season without fans is actually quite small. And as we know, a few weeks back, there was a negotiation between the Players Union and the MLB. Basically, the Players Union promised that they wouldn't sue MLB for not getting paid their full salaries for 2020 if there was no season. And as a result of that, they received guaranteed service time, which benefits the players. Now, either this morning or last night, Dr. Fauci actually contributed an idea that could be used for all sports, not just baseball, but baseball would be one. And this is a lot less aggressive in what it would take. It would involve players setting up in hotels and staying there. It would involve them interfacing with individuals, and maybe there would have to be some quarantine measures mixed in. In this way, teams could actually make use of their actual stadiums as well. But this would also be a fanless scenario. So it'll be interesting to see where this proposal goes, if anywhere. So what have I been doing? Have I been buying? Have I been selling? Have I been holding? Well, I've been doing a little bit of everything. So over the last 3 weeks, probably in late March, early April, I consigned a bunch of stuff through Probstein, and this was in attempt to increase the overall portfolio quality that I have. So more long-term oriented cards versus cards that might fluctuate more in the short term. This was also to de-risk a bit, and this was also to lessen the overall concentration of assets I have in baseball cards because I do have a liquidity event coming up. I'm expecting a baby in July, so I'm trying to build the amount of cash. And this is something that I was going to do before this whole COVID-19 mess anyways, to be honest. What else have I been doing? Have I been buying? Yes, I've been buying, but I've been very, very picky. I think I picked up 2 major cards over the last 5 weeks, and I've been looking on eBay a lot. I've been watching a lot of items. I've been watching a lot of auctions. I'm noticing that auctions are going for quite a lot. Remember, guys, it just takes 2 bidders. I've noticed that I've done the best with bins. Buy it now or best offer. A lot of these listings I'm targeting are ones that were recently listed, ones that I don't think will be available in 3 or 4 hours, where that starting price is actually a good price and well under where I think market value is. I am targeting high or highest graded examples of in-demand and rare cards of widely sought after, personally sought after, and in-demand players. And I'm trying to pay competitive prices or prices that are under market value. Another place where I'm putting my money, because honestly, I'd be super bored at home if I had only purchased those 2 pickups over the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've been parking my money in these guys too. So basically, I talked about in my last video where I was boasting about SGC as a service, as a company, as a product. Oh, as I'm dropping all the stuff on the floor. Yordan Alvarez is an example of one of the guys that have been buying tops, base, rookies, just more stuff to submit to SGC. I submitted my first order to them last week. Hopefully I get that back within the 20 days where they guarantee it. Now, something about these base cards that's kind of interesting is that Rudy, who is the guy behind the Alpha Investments channel, perhaps one of the bigger Magic the Gathering YouTube channels, really brilliant dude, awesome channel. Once in a while, he creates videos that are on higher level topics where there's parallels to other verticals. So baseball cards could be related to what he's talking about, even though he's talking about Magic the Gathering. And in this video, and I'll include a link in the description to this specific video. If you guys are curious, definitely check it out. He talks about the whole supply chain with Magic the Gathering wax and how, because there's such a slow and gradual release of Magic the Gathering hobby boxes and sets, or I don't really know the configurations, booster boxes or whatever, to the marketplace, and how that's so gradual, it can take up to 60 days after release, which is after all the hobby shops and distributors are allocated. It can take, up to that 60-day mark in order to get a real gauge on what the market value is of the singles within that product. And I bring that up because 60 days, we're at about 60 days, maybe a little bit more, after the release of Topps Series 1. Because based on the circulation of those rookie cards on eBay or other platforms, you're going to maybe see higher prices at the beginning because the demand will be higher than the supply itself for those specific cards. And I've noticed that Yordan cards have actually gone down to about $4.50 if you can pick up a lot of greater than like 3 or 4 cards at once. So that's what I've been doing. I've been averaging between $4.50 and like $4.75, $5 for those Yordan cards. I, of course, brought up Yordan in the speculation series back in December. A guy I definitely feel very strongly about. But taking a step back, guys, and this is just one opinion, this is my opinion. One of the reasons why I'm not actively buying sports cards right now, as much as many of the other people that are in Facebook groups or on YouTube or on eBay, is because if you were to take the entire pool of sports card collectors, flippers, and investors in the modern baseball niche, I would say I am more pessimistic than average on the overall health of the economy, and also more pessimistic than average about baseball games coming back soon. SGC I talked about. I want to spend a little bit more time talking about them. Overall, the video was very well received. Of course, there's going to be different opinions, which I always welcome. I had a lot of great input. Some of the things that I didn't stress enough or missed in my analysis of the different companies. But my customer service experience, guys, was great, just as advertised. This was actually my first time ever going through SGC from the submission perspective. So everything's been great so far. Another thing I noticed is that comps have started to shift over the last maybe month or two as SGC's seen a greater influx on the modern cards, the cards from the last 5, 10, or even 20 years. So something I noticed, I was watching eBay, I'll put up the different comps right now. I was watching the Topps Gold 2001 Pujols rookie card, SGC 9.5. I noted that that went for a lot more than 2 BGS 9s, and those were strong 9s with subgrades of at least 9. I think one of them had 2 9.5s and 2 9 subgrades. So it was nice to see. I mean, obviously Mint Plus is a superior condition to Mint, but it was nice to see SGC outperform the Mint label, but also do it by quite a bit. I've also been notified that SGC 9.5 has been consistently outperforming PSA 9s, which is even more impressive, I would say. Another thing I noticed, this is probably the most stunning find of all, and this was brought up by Tyler Short, actually, in his video. Check him out, by the way. He does some really great stuff. And the Bat Down Acuna card in a SGC 10 Gem Mint actually outperformed some recent comps of the same card in BGS 9.5. Actually, I think 1 or 2 were true gems as well. So for SGC to perform kind of right in the middle of comps for Beckett, very well-trusted service for modern cards, very highly used, at least relative to SGC. It was nice to see SGC 10 Gem Mint perform about the same as a BGS 9.5 Gem Mint. And I'm also hearing the same trend here where SGC 10s are doing pretty well against 9.5s, not always outperforming them, but not underperforming them consistently like they were in the past. Another thing that people brought up, and a lot of people just can't get out of their heads, and I see it in message boards all the time, Facebook groups, etc., is I can't leave PSA because they give me the highest return on investment. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but ROI is not just a product of what you pay for the initial good and what you sell it for, but it's also a product of time. To calculate an ROI most precisely, you want to factor in your holding period to figure out what your annualized level of return is. So time is definitely a variable here, guys. There is an opportunity cost of having your capital tied up. In addition to that, there is a huge benefit if you're first to market. That is predominantly why I am submitting all of these 2020 Topps Series 1 base cards to SGC. So not just from a long-term perspective might these cards actually be pretty decent in SGC holders, but to get them there in the short term, be able to flip them right away, there's a huge benefit in doing that, guys. Another thing that was brought up was the fact that SGC doesn't have a registry. I get it. You know, PSA's got the best registry. But this is something that mostly appeals to collectors versus flippers and investors. And if SGC is to break into that modern space, break into that investment or pack ripping space, I think they're going to find that most people aren't really that concerned with having a strong, robust, comprehensive registry built out where everybody's submitting inventories of their cards and you compare and there's bragging rights and blah, 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 blah. Another thing I wanted to bring up with the SGC 9.5 grade, if that continues to consistently outsell PSA 9s, that means that SGC has 3 grades that outsell PSA's second best grade. Let that stew for a little bit. Also, SGC with their pristine grade, which sells for more than PSA 10s in most cases, is giving the people that submit to SGC higher upside potential with the SGC pristine. And you're getting, with modern cards submitted in bulk, maybe lower end cards where you're not really expecting an 8, 8.5, or a 9, it's giving you a higher floor with a 9.5. It's giving you a higher floor if you miss Gem Mint, because you can be caught by the 9.5 Mint Plus. Or with PSA, you miss Gem Mint, you're going down to 9. Now, I get it. You know, there's tons of counter arguments to that. If you were to submit 40 cards to PSA like I do, I might get 70, 80, 90% 10s. So you're not really worrying about the 9. You're not really worrying about that safety net. But it is an interesting way of looking at things. One of the areas where I didn't mention that PSA has a definitive edge against the other two grading companies is in the security of the slab. They have instituted a number of measures, most recently with the Lighthouse Flip, and they're continuing to do so to make it more in line with the CLCT's coin business. The most important thing about that SGC video I created is that I am in no means telling you to boycott PSA. I am not doing the same. I just know that in my experiences dealing with companies outside of sports cards, industries are always going to be healthier if there are 3 major competitors. If market share is dominated, if 95% of market share or greater is dominated by 2 big players, then we have a situation like Verizon Fios and Comcast Xfinity. We have 2 big players that have way too much leverage, and that screws the consumers. So by making SGC a more significant player in the baseball card market space, we're actually helping ourselves. We're forcing PSA to adapt, to listen to some of the suggestions that we've had in the past, to provide a greater level of customer service. The list goes on and on. But at the end of the day, am I going to make more money by submitting these to SGC and making all these videos talking about SGC and, you might call it pumping SGC. Am I going to make more money doing this than I would be if I had been just waiting till PSA reopens, which, by the way, they're open on a limited basis now, actually. They are accepting orders at this time, I heard this morning, just not bulk orders. And they're still grading certain cards, I believe, just in a more limited basis. But am I better off just to sit on these and send them to PSA if I'm just looking for profits? If I'm looking for the highest probability way to maximize my profits, maybe I am better off with PSA. But I would rather influence a more strategic and healthy direction for this hobby than to just be okay with the status quo. I'm not going to settle for PSA where they're at today. And I don't think you should either.